Yeah.
There is one old but current rule. No matter what business are you in, people like to do business with people they like.
Hi, Giuseppe. Welcome to A Glass of Marketing with Joe, and thank you for accepting the invite. So the concept is pretty simple. We're gonna have a glass of wine while talking about marketing, of course, professional and personal growth as well. But before getting started, what are you drinking today?
Great question. First of all, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me. And thanks for giving me a very good reason to drink one of my fab wines. This is, of course, being the two of us from the same place, same region in the south of Italy. This is, of course, red wine from the south of Italy, from our region called Calabria. And it's a Ciro. This is Ciro Riserva, so it's quite old. It's been in a barrel for a while, and now it's ready to be enjoyed.
Great choice, by the way. So yeah, you are, by the way, the first Italian. I mean, after me, you are the first Italian on the channel. And by the way, you're not just Italian, you're from my same region. So great choice. You chose probably the most famous grape from Calabria, which is Gaglioppo. So in Calabria, we got two main grapes for red wine. We got Gaglioppo and Magliocco. Some people define it as the Sangiovese of south of Italy. Sangiovese is one of the most common grapes in Italy. They grow it in Emilia-Romagna. They grow it in Tuscany. So it's part of some of the most famous Italian wines. The color is very ruby red. You have red berries, cherries, and a hint of spice. And yeah, you can tell it's a very deep wine. So you got red fruit and a touch of oak, as you're saying. So you might feel a little bit of vanilla coming from the oak, right? So this is why it's a Riserva. So it must have been at least a couple of years in the barrel. While I'm drinking a Bolgheri Superiore, which is actually like a wine from Tuscany. So they call it, by the way, Super Tuscan because it's actually French grapes. So you have Cabernet, you have Merlot. So it's usually could be a wine from Bordeaux, but then it's actually from Tuscany, right? So I usually try to associate wine with people, and if this was a person, it would be like a French kid that was born in France and raised in Italy, right? By the way, thank you for accepting the invite, and cheers. So yeah, Giuseppe, for people that don't know you, you're actually from Italy, as we said already 5 times, and it's only 2 minutes, so we're gonna probably say it many, many more times. You have a pretty long career in marketing. You're currently the global CEO of Spring Studios, which is, by the way, a well-known agency, very famous for events and creativity as well. On the other side, you are a marketing professor, so you teach at a few of the most famous universities in Italy, and you also teach at the UCL in London. And if this is not enough, you're also a public speaker, and you are an author of a few books with Kotler. He's the founder of the Modern Marketing, aka one of the gods of marketing, if people believe in God. If you don't believe in God, he's one of the best in marketing, right? As you might know, this is not really an interview. This is a talk between two friends while drinking a glass of wine after a long day of work. So the first thing I really wanted to kind of ask you is, you started your own agency with a friend. How is it starting an agency? How do you start it? How do you find the few clients? I believe at the beginning it's a lot of fake it until you make it, right? So how much did you have to fake it in order to make it?
Well, the reality is that at some point you just feel like you want to do something, you're not sure what that something is, and you just try, right? The fake it until you make it is a great approach, and I'm a stronger believer, but at the same time, you need to make it. So you can fake it for a while, which should not be a way for you to rest on the laurels, should be a way for you to feel even more obliged and forced to deliver even better. So you do a bit of overselling for a while. You tell a bunch of prospective clients that you can actually do a bit more than what you can do. I remember those days. I remember with some clients that were way bigger than us, used to work with big agencies. They were like, okay, so I'm going to put you in contact with my executive assistant and they will speak to find some time in the diary. I'm like, yes, of course, sure. And I had created an email address with a fake name, and it was me chatting with their executive assistants just to schedule meetings. Or they were like, just because I didn't have one, of course. Or they were like, shall we meet at your office or our office? We didn't have a meeting room. We were like literally in a garage. So it was not, yeah, we're doing some renovation works here, so maybe we should meet at your place. So I remember, that period. It was nice. It was nice. I don't miss it literally because, of course, it was a nightmare. But I'm glad I went through that.
But you learn a lot, 100%. And I feel like probably the challenge is finding the first few clients, right? Because then after you find and you satisfy the first few clients, so you're not faking it anymore because you actually doing it. Then it's just word of mouth, right? Because, probably the most powerful channel, even today, it's word of mouth, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's the oldest form of marketing and advertising. So especially today, in a world that is saturated with, stimuli coming from all over the world, people trying to convince you to buy their products, services, and experiences, and with the fragmentation of channels that we experience every day, it's very hard for brands to cut through the noise. And word of mouth is a great shortcut, right? So if it's someone you trust, whether because it's a friend or because it's an influencer you trust or because it's a celebrity you want to emulate, whatever is the reason, but if you have that shortcut, which is a word of mouth, so somebody, curating for you the selection, then it's just great. So, and it's true for B2C brands, but also for B2B. So a happy client is the best thing you can have, because that happy client, chances are they will speak very high about you and so on.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like probably a few years ago, it was kind of easier to kind of find clients in some ways because there were not many agencies. At the end of the day, like it was harder to build an agency, where today everyone can build an agency. You just need a website. You just need a few LinkedIn profiles. Some people just, do like a Google Ads course, Facebook Ads course, and they are media expert already. So I feel like the entry barrier today is much lower, right? So in order then to trust an agency, I feel like word of mouth today might be more important than yesterday.
Well, yes, it is. Again, there is such a huge fragmentation and bombs of people trying to convince you to buy their products and services and experiences that you need to simplify, right? You need to make up your mind in the easiest way. So yes, it is. And I agree with you. I would also say that probably trust is even more important. So it's not just word of mouth, it's literally trust. For the same reasons, right? It's just I'm just changing the trust with word of mouth. So trust, I think, is really the core. If you trust someone, then his or her word will be more important to you. So again, if you go to the root of the concept, it's not the word of mouth itself; it's the trust that you have. And when it comes to the people who pretend they're experts, even though they are not, that's where trust comes into play, because perhaps they can pretend for a while and that's the fake it until you make it. But if they don't make it, first, negative word of mouth can kill anyone in this world, considering the huge reach that everybody has today. And second, the more you build trust around you, and you're doing a great job with this podcast, for example, this is a way to increase the trust in you and the likability and the willingness to spend time with you and to trust you and to your awareness, your reputation, your consideration as a person, which is pretty much the same with brands. If people trust you, people will come.
or it's just an excuse to drink more wine with me. So hopefully more people.
That's it.
Or more people are gonna invite me out for drinks and not for marketing.
But you know what?
Yeah.
There is one old but current rule. No matter what business are you in, people like to do business with people they like.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Even if they just invite you for a drink just because they feel like you're a nice person to spend a couple of hours or half an hour with, it's still good because they're building that, again, first level of trust. Probably it's not business trust yet, but people like to do business with people they like. So it's a good beginning.
It's a great point. And I always say I would love to work with people that I will like to go out and have a drink with, right? And unfortunately, it's not always the case. If I had to start my own company, I would like to start it with people that I would like to go holiday with, right? Which, sometimes it's good. Some other times, probably it's not, because I usually try to keep business and friends separate, because then you either ruin the business or the friendship. Have you ever had an experience like this, or what do you think?
I think Mario Puzo, which is one of our famous compatriots, who is the author of The Godfather, the book, the original book the film was based on, wrote something like, friends and money are like oil and water. They never mix. So, I mean, that's a bit too extreme, but, it's something to take into consideration. I must admit I've been lucky so far. So I've been doing business with many friends, and I never had a real bad experience. Sometimes you just end up realizing that you trust someone and you respect someone more as a friend than as a business partner. But that is based perhaps on a choice that you disagree or you don't share, or the way they approach conversations, the way they negotiate, the way they treat people. It's slightly different from the way you would. And then you just realize, although you still want to be a friend, although you would definitely recommend that person to do business with, that is not exactly the kind of behavior that you would enjoy or you would share. And you just decide to be clear and to just part ways, if it makes sense. But I never had a bad experience. I'm aware of many bad experiences. I've heard so many stories about even marriages broken for business reasons and of course, in this dangerous zone. But in my case, I've been lucky enough to work with great friends and great business partners.
Yeah, and sometimes having fun with someone and having a beer together, going out, going on holiday, going to Ibiza doesn't mean that it's the same person that can handle stress when you're looking for a new budget to raise your new startup. You become a CEO of an agency. You've been CEO twice. But my question here would be, what does a CEO do? Like, I know it means Chief Executive Officer, but what does he actually do?
That's a great question, because there is not an answer. It really depends on the way one interprets the role. I can tell you what it means for me. A few things. So one, sometimes I say that CEO today is a chief calibrator officer, in the sense that you need to calibrate the speed, the depth, the length, the intensity of the change you want to bring to an organization. And I'm saying this because unless you're running a startup, so you're a founder other than a CEO. But if you are a CEO of an established business that has been around for a while, you basically deal with three things: resources, processes, and values. Resources, meaning tangible and intangible resources. A brand is an intangible resource. The credibility, the reputation of an organization is an intangible resource you find there when you arrive. And you also find human resources, right? So people. Processes are the patterns of interaction. So the resources interact with each other, with their bosses, with their peers and people they manage, depending on what is the culture of the organization, what are the processes, what is something. I worked for a company where there was a no tie policy. So you were not allowed to wear a tie just because we wanted to be different, we wanted to be understatement, we wanted to be vice versa. So that is part of the culture. That becomes a process to some extent, because in the selection process, for example, you would never hire someone who shows up with a tie, right? And then you have values. Values, even in this case, tangible and intangible. Tangible values is the money that you have in the bank. How big is your organization? How big an opportunity must be for you to call it an opportunity? And values are also intangible. So intangible values, it really depends. Some organizations value D&I, other organizations may value, sustainability. Of course, they are all relevant, but they prioritize, right? And it's very important to understand this pyramid of resources, processes, and values even before you start, because you need to calibrate that intensity depending on that pyramid. So what the CEO does is, first, it's very important to understand the CEO is not a manager. If the CEO becomes a manager, there's something wrong. Either the organization is too small, so the CEO has to do many things, so it might be a case. But the reality is that you have people, like employees, let's say if you want, resources, people who recently joined the company, junior people, just the resources. Then you have managers. Their job is to manage resources so that everybody's happy, everybody's delivering, everybody is working in a comfortable place. They create the conditions for people to work well. On top, you have executives. Executives are not managing people. Managers are managing people. Executives are, again, creating the conditions so that the managers managing the resources or the people can thrive. If the executives become managers, they're doing micromanagement or micromanagement in the sense that they're bypassing the people they should coordinate and they're jumping those. Now, I'm oversimplifying here. I'm just talking about a big organization. In smaller organization can be slightly different. On top of the executives, you have the chief executive officer. So that guy or girl, depending, is the person in charge of cherry picking and the right executives, unless they're already there. In that case, is coordinating the right executives so that they can create the conditions for the managers to thrive, so that they can coordinate the resources in the best possible way. So this is what a CEO does. On top, typically, a CEO has either shareholders to deal with, in my case, or in public companies, you can imagine. In smaller organizations, perhaps you have a couple of business partners and you're older than the CEO, you're also a big shareholder. It really depends. But the pyramid is something to keep in mind to avoid micromanagement and a bunch of other very bad behaviors. Last thing, if there is one thing that the CEO should remember, is a golden rule. Only do what only you can do. That is the mantra of the CEO. You can't be a CEO unless you only focus on the things only you can do. Anything you can delegate should be delegated, because there is so much in your plate that if you don't delegate, either you burn out after 3 weeks, or you micromanage and people reporting to you would resign because they don't feel empowered, or you get fired.
It feels like it's the art of letting things go, right? Is trusting other people.
It's definitely part of the story.
Don't be like a control freak, right? How do you manage stress? How do you handle that? Because it feels like you have so many people sending you emails, messaging you all day, and then you got the shareholders asking you to, increase revenue as well. So how do you manage that from a personal point of view?
I delegate a lot. That's the simple reason. The simple answer that you can't survive unless you surround yourself with people you trust and you delegate, and you only do what only you can do. If you focus on doing what only you can do, and you're lucky enough to have people you trust so you can delegate, you can do it. I always say that when you see an organization where people are always chronically late, they work until late every day, they are overloaded with stuff to deliver, they always feel like they're tired, and people are burned out every couple of months and so on, you have two options. One, they are structurally understaffed, which is a problem solved. You can't deal with that. And I mean, you can't survive unless you are staffed against what you need to deliver and what you want to deliver. Or they are undermanaged, meaning that the managers in charge are not doing their job. Full stop. So either you change the managers or you find some money to hire more people, but you can't survive that way. Just don't forget that managing your boss, it's also a task that everybody should consider a priority. So I hear you and I agree with you, but I come from a school of thought where, especially when you're junior, if your boss tells you that the presentation was not what he or she expected, you change the presentation. Then, of course, you can get to the point where you tell yourself, you know what, the feedback I'm getting from this person is not helping me to grow. I don't like the approach, or I don't like what this person is telling me, because it's all subjective and it's not really something that helps me growing. So I'm going to quit and find another job. Fair enough. But, I wouldn't say that if a boss is sharing too much feedback, then it means that that person is not delegating enough, or it's not trusting the person enough. It's not that simple. Let's put it this way.
Sounds great, and I agree with you. I usually say my job is 50% digital marketing and 50% I'm just a psychologist.
Yeah.
Because you need to understand people, you need to manage people, you need to handle situations, conflict management, I think, in companies, and probably your job is a lot of conflict management, a lot of people not liking each other, because, it's hard. Sometimes corporates are like families. You can't really choose them, right? You need to work with them and live with them, right?
Right,
Anyway,
it's a bit easier.
yeah.
You can escape easier.
Anyway, you just wrote your latest book. The title is Redefining Retail, 10 Guiding Principles for a Post-Digital World. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting is the role of stores, the role of offline shops, right? I feel like in the past, people were looking for informations online and then purchasing offline, right? Where I feel, of course, in some markets, I'm trying to generalize, and it's not always true, but I feel like today is the opposite. People go offline to kind of feel the experience, touch the product, and then they might buy online because it's easier. You don't have to carry all your bags, and I see this a lot in Asia, for example, where people go to the shop, they just look at the products and then they order it and then get it home. Even in England, like if you go to Sainsbury, you can actually scan all the products you want to buy, and then you go home with no products and you're gonna get the products the day after. So do you agree with that? Do you think is it just an hybrid?
It's a bit more complicated. You are asking about eyes to an Eskimo or a penguin. So I must tell you that it's more nuanced. So first, the so-called Ropo, so research online, purchase offline, can be read the other way around with the same letters. It can be research online, purchase offline, or research offline, purchase online. And there is a reason for that. If I were to buy glasses for Cabernet or Maniocco, whatever other red one, there is no way I would go to a store right away. I would go online, search for information, learn what is the right glass. Once I have a clear idea, then I find the store. Then I go to the store. I check, I speak with the sales associates. If they're good, they will sell me something. If they're not, I will take that information, I will take that learning, I will go back online and perhaps buy online. But if they're good, I'm there. Impulse buying is a thing. They will have a new transaction. However, if I want to buy a washing machine, there is no way I can start my journey online because I know nothing about washing machines. So I need to start from a place where I see stuff and I speak with stuff. In the sense that they tell me, they explain to me, they educate me about the products, and then perhaps I will go back online. Now, problem is two problems. One, this is the phygital world, and this dynamic has been around for a while, so it's not new. Problem number one is, in many cases, people don't just do Ropo. They do Ropo, in the sense that they start online, they go offline, and perhaps they go back online. They perhaps read a review and they change their mind and they go offline again. So the reality is that you have no idea where these people will end up buying. And so first, we should stop calling them point of sales because it's not necessarily there that the sale will happen. Second, in some cases, these point of sales are just point of experience because, as you said, people just go there, experience the product, and just they buy somewhere else. Problem is, in many cases, the owner of the point of sale, whatever you want to call it, the store, and the e-commerce website where people buy are not the same owner. So imagine you're an entrepreneur, you're a franchisee, you're running a store, and you have people coming, asking for information, and then leaving because they buy online on Amazon or whatever other website. You are the one who pays the bills, who pays the people, deals with the people and all the problems linked to the managing resources, and you pay all the bills at the end of the month, but you have no transactions because people buy somewhere else. So, this was phygital. It's been around for a while. Companies were struggling to cope with that. And at some point, something happened. A virtual world. Now, virtual world is not NFT, metaverse. Virtual world is my 9-year-old son, coming to me and asking for money, like real money, like dollars or euros, to buy a Montclair in a virtual world, in a video game called Fortnite. And the day after, asking for money, real money, to buy a BMW for his avatar on Fortnite. Now, this is something because it means that a human being, prospective clients, future client, is establishing an emotional connection with the brand in a world that is not physical nor digital, it's virtual. What is the next best action for a customer that starts the customer journey in a virtual world, considering that he or she has no experience with the brand in the physical world and no experience in the digital world? I don't have the answer. Nobody has the answer. But just to answer your question and to close, Phygital has been around for a while. It was a nightmare. The Ropo has been around for a while and it was hard to crack for companies. Now it's even harder because you have a virtual dimension. And that's why in the book, by the way, that you've cited, we talk about a 3-dimensional customer journey, like 3-dimensional customer journey, physical, digital, and virtual.
I define myself as a market victim. Like I'm actually like, I love marketing myself. Like I love going to stores and just asking people working there about the story of the brand. I mean, I love it. I give you an example. I wanted to buy this Stone Island jacket. I was in Amsterdam for work and I was walking around. I went into the store and I asked the employee about everything, like the material, how they do it, the story of Stone Island. By the way, I already knew the story. I know it's an Italian brand, but I wanted to know more. I wanted to have an exchange. Also, I was pretty bored, to be honest. I was like, I want to kind of spend some time, but at the same time, also kind of investigate from a marketing point of view, right? How these people tell the story, right? And to be honest, these people were very trained. You could tell they knew the story. And behind, like, for example, Stone Island products, there is a lot of research. Like they build new material. So it's actually very cool. And the funny thing is, we spoke for 30 minutes. By the way, I also tried this jacket. And then I went on because that was too expensive for me. I was like, I'm not going to pay, this amount of money for this jacket, which by the way, I don't really need it. So I'm not a very impulsive buyer, by the way. I think about it a lot. I go closer to paranoia than impulsive. Do I have to buy it? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yeah. But I touched the product. I made sure that was my size and everything, right? Then I went on and I started looking for this product for like weeks. I searched for it in the UK. I searched for it in the Netherlands. And then, of course, I found out that in Italy, they had the lowest price. Like I managed to buy this product 40% off. And funny enough, I found it 30% off. And I was still thinking about it because I was like, I don't need it. But I mean, it's 30% off. But, I work in marketing. So I'm a marketing victim. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm going to wait for that. And then I got an email from the online store saying, if you buy it within the next 48 hours, we give you an extra 10%. I'm like, I have to buy it, right?
Great job.
Yeah. So I feel like this is a great example of experience, right? Because I went to the store. By the way, if the person working in the store was rude, maybe that will change my experience, right? Or if he didn't really know much and I knew more than him, because the guy realized that I had the passion for the product. So he had the same passion. So we started actually, we kind of became friends, but at the same time, that was also a great e-commerce example, right? Because like they managed to, monitor my behavior and get me back with this extra 10%. So I think this is a great example. And I feel luxury brands in general, they nail it in terms of experience, because I feel like experience is everything, right? We live in a world where you don't buy a jacket. I mean, yeah, you buy a jacket because you called, but most of the time you can buy a jacket from Zara. Why are you buying a jacket? Of course, you want to be sustainable. So this is, of course, another topic. Like, Prada, Stone Island, they are, doing a lot of great things with nylon, regenerating nylon. But this is another topic. So, of course, sustainability, which is part of the storytelling, right? But at the end of the day, you buying things for the story. So I wanted to ask you, like, how much is storytelling important today? Like, in a world where, of course, you can always find the lowest price, so much quantity around. Like, if you want to find a good quality jacket, like the price range, I don't know, of €800, you can find like thousands of independent brands from everywhere. Like, how much is important? Like, telling the right story to the right people.
We human beings. We have new tools, new technology, but we're still human beings. We love stories. If you engage with whoever human being and you start your conversation or your talk on a stage saying, once upon a time, they will instantly look at you. Or if you start by saying, you jump on a stage, look at the audience and you say, line break, and you look at them, they're all yours. We love stories. We're human beings. That's the way we work. Our brains are wired this way, so full stop. It's important. But we have too many tools and too many stories, and we're all broadcasters, and we all, with our smartphones, we share content with an audience, our friends, followers, fans, and so on. So we're overloaded with content. So what you want with stories. But when it comes to retail, when it comes to your specific example, more than storytelling itself, it is the ritual, the sales ritual. And the more the person who is playing that role is a real lover of the brand, of the product, the category, if you bump into someone in love with the product, the more that person can build the trust we talked about before, can build that emotional connection on behalf of the brand. So basically, there is a human being building an emotional connection with another human being, and the brand is the magical object facilitating that relationship. So it's absolutely paramount today, as always. We have new tools. We have new ways to tell stories. Now we even have a technology that for the first time ever is generative. We've been using technology forever as a way to store content, or as a way to distribute content, or as a way to amplify content. But that content, that story, that idea was generated by a human. This is the first time in history where ideas, stories can be generated by non-human agents. This is new. This is a big thing. So stories have been important forever. Tools have been around forever, different tools for different ages. But the way we can use tools now is completely different. And we need to ask ourselves, what is the role of human beings? What is the freedom within the boundaries, and what are the boundaries that we should build around Gen AI to avoid what somebody fears in terms of taking over the world and making all the decisions for us and so on and so forth. So these are, I guess, great questions, and don't ask me to answer because I don't have the answer. There is no way you can ask.
I feel the role of human beings is being human beings. I think our competitive advantage, if we were a product, so if you were asking me to sell human beings to human beings, I would say we are imperfect by definition. And I feel like imperfection is what makes us perfect. It what makes us what we are today, right? And I feel like people get in love with imperfection. Like when things are too perfect, there is something fishy behind it. There is something that there is no soul behind something that is too perfect. By the way, I was reading an article by performancemarketingworld.com, and they were saying that consumers are hesitant to exchange their data for better ads, but at the same time people are willing to exchange their data, so like email addresses, for the right information, for the right value. I know you got like a very powerful and high quality newsletter, by the way. I love your content. What I really like is that, first of all, you don't stalk people. You send an email sometimes, and it's actually like feels like you're receiving an email from a friend, right? Do you think that people are willing to exchange the right information for the right content?
I think communication has been misinterpreted, misled, misunderstood for a while. And this is probably because there were only few sources, like official sources of communication back in the day. So the idea was there are 3, 4, 5, 6 channels on TV and a bunch of channels on radio, and these guys are entitled and allowed to send messages to normal people, like human beings. In today's world, where, as I've said before, everybody's a publisher, everybody can create content, and there's been this democratization and there are no barriers to entry, as you've said before, it's harder, and we need to trust the source, as we've said before. So I believe the real essence of communication is closer to trading than it is to a one-way street. Trading implies an exchange of value. In a world saturated with information, in the economy of attention, the share of mind or the share of attention is so valuable, and there are so many alternatives, that if you decide to give me, assuming that you're reading my newsletter, 5 or 4 minutes of your time every 2 weeks, first, I'm super proud. There is no way, especially because I'm not famous for being famous, right? I'm not a celebrity. So the only reason for you to read it and to give me 5 minutes of your time every couple of weeks is if I give you value. If I don't give you value, you will just cheat. You will just read something else. And there are so many great newsletters, by the way, right? So, you have too many alternatives. So to your point, I think communication is trading. And in this case, it is food for thought versus share of attention. And I'm still fine-tuning. I'm just reaching out to about 4,000 people, no more than that, 3.5. And I can't say I've cracked the code. I'm not sure. I'm working on it. But I believe I've found my angle, like my personal way to tell stories about business reality or the market or marketing or retail, and I feel there is an audience for my way of telling stories. So now I'm more focusing on the fine-tuning things, right? So it's the length, the approach, starting with the story, an anecdote or fast facts, and then the anecdote. I'm just fine-tuning and trying to crack the right story, or the right way to tell the story. But I think yes. And especially if you think of the way an algorithm of a social network works. I have 35 followers on LinkedIn. My average post in terms of impressions sits between 8 and 15K. And 30% of them are not first contacts, meaning that a good post is seen by probably 6 out of 30,000, 35,000 people. I don't feel like I own that audience. I don't feel like that audience is my audience. I feel like I'm borrowing a platform and they're pretending to let me speak with my audience, but I'm not. A newsletter, as you've said, is an email in the inbox of a friendly contact. So I feel it works.
I feel, as you said, you then become the slave of the platform because you might have 30,000 followers, but then what's your impression share? How many people actually see your content?
Yeah.
So two things. First of all, you own the data because when you have your own newsletter as a personal branding, as a company, and you actually use it wisely, by the way. So there is a difference between remarketing, email marketing, and stalking, right? So of course, we need to be careful, like with relationships, right? If I have a good relationship with you, Giuseppe, I don't message you 5 times an hour or like 10 times a day, right? But at the same time, so one thing is definitely the ownership of the data, the ownership of the relationship. So I feel like newsletter are actually getting back, or probably they never left. But, I think they're pretty strong for this reason. On the other side, I feel like platforms. So I was talking to a person the other day, and I think he made a great point. He said, platforms gave the freedom to, creative people, or like in general to people to express themselves. So they have their own platform. But at the same time, I feel like if you want to hack the algorithm, or at least to be visible, you then become the slave of the algorithm because you need to post every day in that hour. Like, even like TikTok or many different platforms ask you to post every day. And I see platforms like LinkedIn full of people then post a lot of quantity but not quality, right? So I don't want to have 10,000 posts. I would rather have one email from you twice a month, which is delivering quality. Because I feel like people then feel the pressure of always say something, where I feel like and it's the same in life.
So true.
Sometimes in south of Italy they say sometimes the best word is the one you don't say. Right now, I don't know if it's always the case, but I think learning to say less in order to say more, I think, is key in life and in communication. What's your personal philosophy? Because to be successful, I feel like, I usually use the metaphor of the glass of wine, right? I feel like successful people are like wine. They have to be fun because, like wine, right? You need to know to have fun because wine has alcohol in there. So it's fun. Apparently on one side is fun, but on the other side, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to have content. You need to have discipline because inside a glass of fine wine, you have a lot of, knowledge, a lot of history. So how do you balance that? What's your way of having fun? How do you avoid going burnout, but at the same time, taking things in perspective? Because I feel like in a society where everyone needs to be perfect, there is efficiency, and AI is just bringing more efficiency, right? Where do you find your soul?
What a question. I think you should, this is at least the way I see it, you should focus on the long run. And so the way I do it is I focus on the long run and I plant as many seeds as possible while I go like on the street. If you focus on the long run, you won't have the time, perhaps, or the energy to pay too much attention to failure. So if something doesn't work, you have plenty of other seeds that are flourishing, springing up. So this is the way I do. I've been always doing this as a natural attitude. Now I do it deliberately. But back in the day, it was more like the way I was. So I wasn't someone who could focus on one thing because I get bored after 3 weeks. And so I needed to, of course, at some point you're forced to focus on one thing, whether it's your work or your family or school or whatever it is. So you always have like a full-time job, let's call it this way. But I've never been happy with the full-time job. It's never been enough for me. And I've never been a big fan of the separation, work-life balance. To me, work-life balance is BS. Work-life balance is, to me, it's more about work-life integration, which doesn't become disintegration. Otherwise, that's a problem. But work-life integration means that your life and your work completely overlap just because you do what you love. If you don't do what you love, then of course you need to find a balance, but you have another problem. So to me, it's literally planting seeds, trying to be on as many fronts as possible, trying to know as many people as possible, trying to explore as many options as possible. Once one of them fails, well, I have plenty of orders. Let's see how it goes. And try and try and try and try. You don't know how many emails, like literally cold emails, I've sent to random people. And while sending the email, I was promising myself, if he or she answers this email, I will be the happiest man in the world. And, if you send 1,000 of them, of course, at some point, somebody will answer, right? And every time, I wasn't happy. I was happy for 10 minutes, and then I was already thinking the next, which leads me to say that the way I do it is I plant many seeds, that's for I plant many seeds, and then I see them grow, and I'm happy with the results while I focus on a full time. That's more or less what I do. And then, of course, as soon as they start springing up, you delegate. So we go back to the previous point, because if you don't delegate, you just end up being burnout. At the same time, the flip side, so the problem I have and what I need to deal with, which is my Achilles heel, is that you don't enjoy the present enough. So what I'm working on now, just to show a bit of vulnerability as well, is enjoying the present more. Because the flip side of being so focused on the long run, on the future, planting seeds, move on, and trying to check the seeds, how are they going, and then quick check with the people you work with and you delegate to and you trust to see how things are going. It's great. You deliver a lot, but at some point you just pause and say, oh my God, I'm 42. What happened? And you're like, yeah, I've done many things, and you're proud of it. But the reality is that you didn't have the time to enjoy it properly. So this is not about slowing down. This is about me finding a different way to be me. And I'm working on it.
Yeah, usually my personal philosophy is two things. First is remember you die. So in front of a problem, of course, I try to face the problem and fix it. But at the same time, I'm like, in front of death, right? In front of, the end, what's this, right? Let's look at the bigger picture. And it's not minimizing it. It's actually understanding that there is always priorities and there is always like a perspective to things. So I feel this is one thing. The other thing I feel it's simply, so you know what, I've realized that what successful people, when I say successful in this case, I mean people successful at work, right? Successful people at work, what they really have in common is that they are obsessive. All the people I met, when they have, and I feel like I'm one of them. I'm not saying I'm successful. I'm just saying I'm obsessive.
Yeah.
When I have a project in mind, I don't sleep at night. Like I have to do it. I came out with the idea of this YouTube channel like 3 weeks ago. In 1 week, I did the intro, the branding, you know what I mean? And I feel like being obsessive, I think, leads you to be unhappy, because when you are obsessive on something, you always find imperfection. You always find something that is not working. So my secret in that case is, then get back to the first point. Remember you die. So even if something is not perfect 100%, it's like, all right, now you gave your best, now chill out. After a long day of work, I'm like, for example, my secret is I go running almost every day. I try to meet friends, have my break. Because, it gets back to, I think, having both sides is, life and work, right? And sometimes I feel like companies are made of people. You need to work with people. Happy people make successful companies, right? Getting to the last point then, what's your definition of success? Because, people, for some people, success is, becoming the global CEO of Spring Studios. For other people, being successful is living in a farm in the middle of nowhere in Calabria or South America or whatever. Maybe the truth is in the middle, maybe not. What's your definition of success?
It's funny because, of course, what you've said probably was the definition of success for me 5 years ago. So the reality is that, and it's just normal, you always move the bar, right? It's always higher. I'm going to give you a philosophical answer. I'm a big fan of Magna Graecia, so the ancient Greek. The region where we both were born was colonized by ancient Greeks, and so we've been influenced heavily by them. And of course, I've studied their philosophy, their history, and then have been heavily influenced. They used to, so Aristotle, so one of the big guys, let's say, had this idea that every human being has to deal with a demon, with a devil, your personal devil that you want, right? And happiness or success, if you want, is, according to Aristotle's and Plato later, is aspiring to something called, well, in English, I think it would sound like eudaimonia or eudaimonia or eudaimonia, whatever. EU in the ancient Greek used to mean good, so something positive. And daimonia is linked to the demon, right? So the idea that the only way to be successful is to make your personal devil or your personal demon happy. But before you make it happy, you need to find it. You need to understand what he or it, let's say, that looks like. And so the more you are self-aware, the more you know yourself, the more you understand your demon, the more you increases the chances to make the demon happy, to live a life that is aligned with your true self. And that is what success and happiness and everything positive happen.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Thank you for this insightful conversation. That was great having you. And yeah, cheers to personal demons and self-awareness then.